Hi, I'm Nigel Dixon and I'm with www.thetrinitybible.org. That's www.thetrinitybible.org. Everything on that website that's available to download is free of charge. We are bringing out a new Bible translation. It's a word-for-word literal translation from what we call the Reformation text, or the Received text as I prefer to call it. That's the Hebrew Masoretic text and the Greek Textus Receptus that launched the Protestant Reformation. And we've translated that into what I call real English. That's US spoken English, although I'm a Brit. That's English that Americans can understand at around about grade 8, grade 9 level. And that's because every word of this entire text has been road tested by my two youngest boys, Samuel aged 8 and Joseph aged 7. Joseph and Samuel started when they were aged 5 and 7. And if Samuel couldn't understand a word, you see, Samuel was my benchmark. If he couldn't understand a word, I had to find a word that he could understand. Every single word has been translated by a word or a phrase, and I've kept a glossary which you can find on the website, which tracks every single word change from the King James Bible. We've looked at the King James as a reference text because we believe that the King James Bible is a faithful, accurate translation of the Reformation text. And I'm reading to you today from Paul's letter to the Romans, chapter 8. So, there is now no guilty verdict for those who are in anointed Jesus, who are not walking according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Because the Spirit's law of life in anointed Jesus has made me free from the law of missing the mark and death. Because of what the law could not do, as it was weak through the flesh, God condemned missing the mark in the flesh. He sent his own Son in the form of sinful flesh, so the law's justice and right standing could be completed in us, who are not walking according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Because those who are according to the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but those who are according to the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. Just bear with me a second while I scroll upwards. Thank you. Because to be fleshly minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the fleshly mind is hostile to God, because it is not subject to God's law. For sure, it cannot be. So then, those who are in the flesh cannot please God. But if God's Spirit is in you, forgive me, let me correct that. That's Romans chapter 8, verse 9. I'll read again. But if God's Spirit lives in you, you are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit. Now, if anybody does not have the Spirit of anointed, he is not his. And if anointed is in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the Spirit is life because of justice and right standing. But if the Spirit of the one who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you, the one who raised anointed from the dead is going to life your mortal bodies too, through the Spirit who lives in you. So, brothers, we are not debtors, not to the flesh, to live according to the flesh. Because if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. But if you kill the body's practices through the Spirit, you are going to live. Because as many as are led by God's Spirit are God's sons. Because you have not received back the spirit of slavery to fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption. In him we shout, Abba, which means Daddy, Father. The Spirit himself testifies together with us that we are God's children, and if children, then heirs. God's heirs, and joint heirs with Anointed. If we suffer with him, we can also be glorified together. Because I reckon the sufferings of the present time cannot be compared to the glory that is going to be revealed in us. Because the creation fully expects, with intense anticipation, the revelation and uncovering of God's sons. Because creation became subordinate to moral depravity, not willingly, but through the man who subordinated it, in hope. Because creation is also going to be delivered from corruption's slavery into the glorious liberty of God's children. Because we know the whole creation groans, and it is in labor, in pain, together until now. And not only them, but us too. We have the Spirit's first fruits. Even we are groaning inside ourselves. We are waiting for the adoption of bodies setting free. Because we are saved by hope. But hope seen is not hope. Because why would a man still hope for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, then we wait for it with patience. In the same way, the Spirit helps our weaknesses too, because we do not know how we ought to pray. But the Spirit himself makes intercession for us with groans that cannot be spoken. And the one who searches the hearts knows the Spirit's mind, because he makes intercession for the set-apart ones according to God's will. And we know all things work together for good, for those who love God unconditionally, for those who are the called according to his purpose. Because those he knew before, he also predestined to be conformed to his Son's image, so he could be the firstborn among many brothers. And those he predestined, he also called, and those he called, he also made just, and those he made just, he also glorified. Then what are we going to say about these things? If God is above us, who can be against us? The one who did not spare his own Son, but delivered him up for us all, how will he not also give us freely all things with him? Who is going to lay anything to the charge of God's chosen? It is God who makes just. Who condemns? Anointed, who died. Better still, who rose again, who is even at God's right hand. He makes intercession for us too. Who is going to separate us from Anointed's unconditional love? Will pressure, or being boxed in, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or threat, or a knife? As it is written, Psalm 44, verse 22. for your sake.